course it did, you little jerk.
What's going on, jerk faces? Welcome to another episode of the Circle of Jerks podcast. We're here as always with our friend Andy,
What up?
The brains and brawn behind the podcast. You have me, your faithful host, Robert, as always, and we have our new guest, who I'm very excited to have on. Is a good friend of mine from church, and for all the ladies out there, he's single. And he's ready to mingle. Welcome on to the podcast, John Choi.
Hey, doesn't matter like when you watch this, like probably still single. So,
so how's it going, John? It's good to have you on. I know we've been trying to plan this for a little while.
yeah, it's going okay, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How? Why don't you share with the audience of how we kind of came to be friends and. We used to hang out all the time. Not quite as much anymore.
Just a quick
Yeah,
bio.
we used to like hang out like here quite a bit.
Yeah.
No, but like I think I met you through church. What is it, like 4 or 5 years ago, something like that?
I feel like it's longer now because I think.
Maybe like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, probably
like
about
that?
5-6 years ago now.
Yeah. And yeah, just met you through church, and we were going to like a smaller church at the time.
Yeah.
And
Wait, what church? Sorry, what church you guys meet at?
it was a church called Resonate.
Okay.
Like, yeah, we used to meet like down the street, like not too far from here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We used to kind of, because I kind of opened up my place, we would play a lot of board games here, like late at night. We had a big group of us that played a lot of like Settlers of Catan and what have you. I mean, it was
Yeah, it was weird. Yeah, there was a time because I mean, from my experience, also my church went through a board game kind of craze as well.
Yeah.
Getting all sorts and like card games as well. I remember like there was a card form of Monopoly Deal.
Yeah.
That was really popular. And then of course the Settlers of Catan and and I think there's been a bit of a resurgence of board games.
Yeah.
At my church.
I think we're in the kind of like, obviously you have all like the good old classics like Monopoly, Connect Four, all those like, what was it? What was
like
the Mousetrap? Yeah, like and all like all of those. And then it kind of like I don't really feel like there was much after that, like for a while, and then within like the last maybe like 10-15 years, it's just there's people that are like, what was great? Board games, and then they started creating like new stuff.
There's like all these and even like more adult themed ones, like you have your Cards Against Humanity. And,
oh god, that's so great.
I have a particularly funny anecdote about it. I'm not gonna share it this time, but it was pretty funny.
We should have a Cards Against Humanity episode.
We should. We actually there was that time that we got together and we actually played it.
Oh god, that was great.
Yeah. I'm not gonna tell the entire story, but basically, I was with a group of people that somehow all of a sudden forgot the whole point of the game. Is to come up with the most messed up things possible.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And people, I apparently came up with I apparently came up with the most tasteless thing possible.
And I was surprise me.
Yeah, and I was getting a lot of side glances.
Oh boy, we're definitely gonna have to do that sometime. But anyways, so yeah, that's
right.
so that's how like John and I like kind of ended up becoming friends. And I think a lot of those times when we would come play board games, we would have a lot of very interesting discussions about like just theology and life, and it was a lot of fun. And I think that's how we end up becoming really good friends.
Yeah.
Okay, so the kind of the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast, and we were supposed to have Lane's Lair on today too, but he wasn't able to make it for family reasons. We had him on last time. When he was on, we had talked a little bit about, I think it was right after Chester Benningfield Bennington passed away. Benningfield, what am I talking about? I know him. Like, I'm a Linkin Park fan. I'm an idiot.
How dare you?
I'm gonna get.
How dare you?
Yeah, I know.
You're out of the fan club.
I know. He had committed suicide, and I think that was kind of right after we did the whole 13 Reasons Why episode, and
I hated that show. Just so you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was kind of, you recently went through kind of an issue where you kind of had to take a break from
like
a
life.
lot, yeah, life, because you had kind of, would you categorize it as a mental breakdown?
Yeah, I mean that's what sparked it. I mean it was like from like just unresolved like depression and like anxiety for a long time.
It was just too much stuff that kind of got piled up, and it just, you couldn't.
I mean I just like never dealt with it like
Yeah.
in any way. So
Okay.
yeah, there's just a point where it just like just breaks down after a certain point.
Right, but you kind of took that break, got the help you needed, and now you're kind of would you say you're kind of recovered from that, or you're on your way to recovering?
I don't know, man. Like, so, like one thing I'm realizing about like recovery, like, when you think about recovery, you're always thinking about like, oh, I started at some place, something bad happened, I went to like a lower place, and now I'm just trying to get back to where I was. Like getting back to where you were, like,
That didn't work where you were at.
Right. So like even aiming to like get back to where I was, like, that's. I'm just realizing that's not the right way to like look at like recovering.
Right.
But just trying to
actually,
like
yeah, because like the idea of getting back to where you were, it sounds counterproductive. Because just thinking about like just like kind of like the idea of like a journey or something.
Yeah.
It's like the purpose of a journey is not to wander aimlessly and then return back to where you started, but it's to progress and to advance.
Right, but like even those like things like where you measure like advancement, like I'm starting to like challenge those things. Cause,
right.
Like,
yeah. No. Because
like,
because sometimes you might end up like walking around in a circle, but that doesn't necessarily it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, but one thing I'm catching myself doing is like after I like took this break from work, I took like a demotion when I went back, and just like one of the like markers of like adulthood is like getting back to like the same salary you were at or same like position you were at. Like, yeah, necessarily aiming to like get back and like that is a measure of like recovery. I think like I'm starting to like rethink that. But like it's a natural tendency saying like, oh, I want to get back to where I was.
But I think the idea of I think people should start shifting I guess the construct of what when they think of like advancement or betterment, not to think of it as like a walking journey, but climbing a mountain.
Right.
Because like even if you like let's say like you fall or you kind of go down a level, then the aim is to the aim should be to get back up there.
Right, but using like different measures of like what like advancement is. Because like I mean like if I went back to like my original pay and original like job position, that'd be one like measure of like recovering. Okay. But like at the same time, like if I'm miserable, like that's obviously not a sign of like recovery. So I don't know. I'm trying to look at like how I'm functioning like day to day as like a marker of like recovery.
Yeah, but within that mountain climbing analogy is like you could then choose to go down a level, and then it'd be still your decision, but it'll still be advancement because maybe like you're going up a certain way to climb a mountain, but it's it's just not possible for you, and so you have to like kind of go back a little bit and then find another way to go back.
Yeah, it's like up. Different mountains that I'm trying to climb. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
not the same one.
Exactly.
So why don't you share a little bit of like how you realize, like how you got to the point where like you realized that you needed that help, and then like the steps you chose to like what you did to when you started to get help.
Okay. Like just to clear everything up, like this wasn't like a totally voluntary thing where one day I was like, oh yeah, it might be a good idea for me to like get professional help.
So there was a kind of a like inciting or triggering incident.
Oh no, for sure. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
so it wasn't just like you like feeling all this and then you kind of like having the wherewithal to be like, okay, I need to get out of here.
Oh yeah,
more
no,
just like
it wasn't that.
you're like you went Vesuvius a bit.
Yeah, I like the way it happened was like I was probably dealing with like depression and anxiety for a stretch of like 6 months or so, and I mean I was probably dealing with like just unresolved issues like longer than that period, but for about the 6 months before like things really got bad, like I started noticing I wasn't functioning well. Like people around me started noticing I wasn't functioning well, and I wasn't like able to like recover, because like if you have a bad week at work, you take the weekend to either rest or like relax, come back Monday, you feel a little bit recharged at least, and then you kind of go on through the process. For about 6 months, like before the lead up to like when I really broke down, I really wasn't recovering like week to week. And yeah, it was becoming like obvious to me that something was wrong. Other people were starting to like get concerned and like worried. But I don't know, I kind of just like kept pressing through.
What were some of the signs?
I mean, just sleep problems and like general irritability. That's like one of the big, like persistent irritability.
Okay. Were there like any like visual, like you bags on the eyes, or like you kind of.
I mean, bags under the eyes probably as a result of like not sleeping.
Or like
well.
kind of like a disheveled kind of appearance.
Not too much.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, like when people were noticing, it wasn't because like I wasn't taking care of myself like physically.
Right. It was more about your.
Like, no, they saw like my mood dipping. Like generally, I'd like to punch in like humor even if it's like really bad.
That's true.
That kind of like corny or.
Yeah, like
corny kind of jokes.
Just generally kind of corny, but just
dry wit.
People or. I wouldn't do that anymore. People start noticing.
All right. Okay.
When
yeah, so it's
people
mood,
like,
personality kind of.
Oh yeah, when people were trying to like brighten up the mood, like just wasn't responding to it. Sometimes like becoming like not like hostile to it, but just like not having it in any way.
Right.
And it was like 6 months of that where it was progressively getting worse. And on top of that, like I don't know, I kept trying to like work through it. I felt like if I like do this next project, whatever. There would be some sort of rest, or like I get over this next challenge. There'll be some sort of like rest. It was this like weird thing of like trying to work through it and hoping that once I overcome some challenge, like all these problems go away. And yeah, that's not the healthiest way to deal with things. But yeah, the triggering event that happened was like I took on a pretty big project at work. It was a new client, a new potential client, and I think we had like a week to do this thing. Yeah, I mean, I already wasn't.
Well, if I could ask,
yeah.
Or like just like how much time would you usually have for something like that?
I don't know. Like a lot of the work that we do, it's pretty like short turnaround times,
Okay.
like within the scale of like days to weeks. But this one was a potentially new client.
Okay.
I don't know. I put a lot of pressure on myself. And that was just another challenge where I was like, if I could overcome this, for whatever reason, I should get better, or like I should be able to relax more after this project. But I don't know, it was a really stressful project, like, and I kind of probably took more responsibility on that than I should have. And yeah, I like screwed up on the project. Like, I mean, I worked super hard on it. And then the timeline was like, I think we had until like Thursday or something to finish this project. Like I was working from like Monday through Thursday on this thing. And then like I thought I was completely done. We submitted it to the client and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm finally done. The next morning I get a call from like my boss saying like, oh, the thing that you submitted, like, yeah, there's a bunch of errors on it. Like the clients aren't happy. You got to come in and like deal with this. And yeah, like I guess mentally I set myself up like once I finish this project, I can like maybe talk to the boss about like restructuring things or like I can relax a little bit because like I put in all this hard work and they could give me
asking
like
for time off.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, it was just the opposite reaction that I was looking for. And I don't know, like yeah, I was just hit with like just terror, I guess. And then like I actually like drove into work and I was sitting in my car in the parking lot and I literally like couldn't get out of my car for like 2 hours.
Wow.
Just because like I just didn't know how to deal with like what was going on. And yeah, like people were like calling me, like texting me and stuff. And then after 2 hours, like I just drove off. And that wasn't like a good move. And yeah, it just like got worse and worse from there because like the clients are obviously unhappy and like work's dealing with that. But then they also have like the guy that was managing the project like going AWOL. And as they're trying to like smooth things over with the client, some people are like trying to look for me because like I said I was going to come in, and I'm obviously not there,
Right.
and I'm obviously not responding.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, it got like kind of out of control where like I think they ended up calling my emergency contacts. That became like a whole ordeal. Like different people like that I used to work with started calling me, and yeah, I just explained that I just couldn't come in, and yeah, I really wasn't functioning well at that point. I think I ended up. So timeline wise, like I get the call that I messed up on the project at around 9 or 10 a.m. I left the parking lot at work at about 11 or so, and then it wasn't until like 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. to where I can like, I don't know, finally like at least like answer like some call
Right.
and get back to people.
You're calm enough to where.
I wouldn't even say calm enough. It was more like enough like pressure from the phone like got me to like say like, oh, I gotta like deal with like.
Oh, so it wasn't as like you like it wasn't as though like you know kind of came down from the ledge. It's more like you just it was you felt enough
like I don't know,
and like another kind of burden to like for all right, finally
yeah,
okay.
And then I called. I think it was the point when like my emergency contact was my mom. She called me, and I was like, "Oh man, it's getting like crazy." So
oh man, my mom's calling me.
Yeah, I mean, I called her. She's like obviously freaked out because she gets like a call from work saying like, you know, like, do you know where your son is? And then I called her back. I called 1 or 2 people back from work, and then the original plan was to just, I think it was Thursday. The original plan was to, I don't know, just decompress like through the weekend, come in on Monday. Monday came and went, extended it to like another week to like let me come in the next Monday. And during this whole time, like I just wasn't functioning well. Like just, yeah, you know when like, I don't know, you get like bad news and like you feel like that like adrenaline rush or like fear for like a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
Like that lasted for like 8 days. Like it was crazy.
Wow.
Where like
Yeesh.
I literally like couldn't like, yeah, I mean I wasn't functioning like after that whole fiasco on Thursday. I can't remember how much I slept, but I think I slept for about a day and a half, maybe a full day.
Wow.
And then I think I didn't leave my apartment for like another 3 or 4 days. And timeline wise, I think it was probably another week or so until I saw someone like in person that I knew, like a non-stranger. Yeah, like I just completely was not functioning well. And yeah, like that's the general like point where I was like, okay, things are obviously bad. I was terrified that, okay, so I was hoping that like after 3 days, like I would, you know, get my courage back or whatever, get my wits back, and then I could just deal with whatever situation. But it didn't happen after like 3 days. Then it didn't happen after like another week after that, and I was literally afraid that it was gonna last forever.
Wow. So like so that'd be 10 days.
Yeah, 10 days of this like weird, like feeling crazy guilty about what's going on. Like everything feels like it's falling apart. Like I let people down. People are worried. I can't deal with things. I want to go back and try to fix things, but I literally feel like I can't. And I literally thought that was gonna last forever. And that's when I started like making like calls and taking steps to like see if like I could get some help for this.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah.
Because I think the one thing is, I think everyone kind of experiences all of those feelings at some point, you know, but not for that period of time.
Yeah.
And
Or to the degree
yeah, it's
that you were experiencing.
Oh yeah.
And so I think, yeah, for a lot of people, I think it's kind of hard to understand when you're really just, you're in trouble. Like, and you know, we're and I don't I personally can't say that I've like know how that how that feels. I mean, it's got to be really just terrifying. Not only to like the people around you who know and love you, but to yourself too, where it's like you don't really know if you're gonna recover or get better from what you're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the scariest thing, like just feeling bad for like a certain period of time. Like if you know it's gonna end after a certain period, you can kind of stomach it more. But just the uncertainty of like, oh my gosh, this is gonna go on forever.
Yeah,
that was
so
terrifying.
it's like it's like the whole like light at the end of the tunnel thing. If you see, if you can see it, then you have some hope. But
Right.
for you, there is like there's like almost like a pinprick.
I mean, I never like experienced anything like this before, so it was like super intense, and it went on way longer than I thought it was going to. So you're just facing unknowns, and that's a scary thing.
I mean, for anybody, that would be terrifying.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah, and I think what you were saying with what you were saying too is you were kind of looking for like, oh, this project's gonna be over. We finished it. Now I can get that relaxing time to kind of get over what I had been feeling, and then it's just like it hit you hard again, where it's like with all of it, and it's like that was where I think you had enough your everything that you had kind of been going through, dealing with it, just like your body kind of just shut down almost in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah, because even after like that first day, like I honestly can't tell you like how much I slept in like that weekend. It's all just kind of this like weird blur of like just panic, getting exhausted from the panic, falling asleep at a certain time from just exhaustion, waking up, feeling the same way, and kind of repeating that thing. Like you kind of lose track of time.
Yeah, no,
and like that's when it got really freaky.
Yeah. So what? Who was it that suggested like you kind of get help? Did anyone like kind of, hey, I think you should go see somebody or talk to somebody, or did you find out like did the pressure from those around you, like where did you kind of go seek it out yourself?
I mean, like the thing is, like for a couple of years, I knew that I wasn't like, like functioning well, where like career-wise, like I was doing okay, like I was getting stuff done and felt really good about that. But yeah, just I mean, there'd be some weekends when like I just didn't recover at all. Like you could sleep all you want, you can relax and like entertain yourself all you want, but just feel absolutely drained, like for months on end. Like going through like waves of like just not normal mood.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I always kind of knew like I should see somebody about this, but I don't know. You never want to like admit like, okay, I gotta deal with this.
It's a pride issue.
Yeah, well, yeah, totally. Because like there'd be times where like things were good for a while, and then there'd be times where things are bad for a while. And I was just hoping like maybe I could like do something to like maybe I could get stronger in some way, or like get more like courage with things in some way.
Right.
But yeah, like it just never would work, and like my mood was like pretty like down for like a period of a couple of years. Yeah, so I always like suspected like, okay, I've got some sort of depression. Didn't really look at it, and didn't really. There were a couple of times when I met with my like primary care physician. And in the back of my mind, that like every checkup, I was like, "Oh man, maybe I should talk to this guy about like." Because like I was comfortable saying like, "Oh, I'm stressed."
Right.
And I think 3 years before this, like my blood pressure started getting out of control, and I was comfortable saying like, "Oh yeah, I was like stressed," and he was like,
for a very like short period of time, but nothing prolonged or anything.
And it was this temporary thing where my blood pressure was high. I was on beta blockers for a while, which helps like lower blood pressure.
Right.
And I just chalked it up to stress. Didn't think about like mood disorders or like depression or anything like that. And I was hoping that was it.
Right.
But every time like I had an annual checkup, I was like, man, maybe I should like talk to him. Maybe this is the time I should like talk to him. So I think a year before the actual breakdown happened on my like last checkup, this was like the most like sideways way of like asking for resources. I was like, oh yeah, like sometimes I get like stressed. Like does does Kaiser have like some sort of like mental health thing? And he gave me like a referral card, and I left it on my refrigerator for like months on end.
Right.
But like I don't know, like that card was always there, but I was like, things aren't bad enough to where I need this. Yeah, but I don't know, man. Like I think about that a lot. Like maybe if I like followed up then, things wouldn't have got like so extreme. But like yeah, like I just had it up there, so like when I went through that like week-long period of like things being really bad, yeah, I had that like referral card, so I called. It actually isn't a short process to see somebody.
Yeah.
So I called one person, they do like an over-the-phone interview, and then after that they schedule like a face-to-face like appointment with a mental health clinician, just to like further assess like what kind of help you may need. And then from there you schedule things with like therapy groups or psychiatrists, like depending on like what comes of that like clinician thing.
Right.
So from the time I made the first call to the time I actually saw someone in person was about, I want to say like a week and a half. And
So-
yeah.
Oh, I was gonna, so kind of assessment period before you actually like sat like, because everyone thinks like typically like you go to see a shrink or something, then you go sit in front of someone like right away. But I think
No, like so that's what the phone thing is.
Right,
so that
right.
referral card I got from my primary care physician, you basically call to, you call, like, or this is how like Kaiser Permanente works. They're kind of like bureaucratic,
Yeah.
but like I like them because they're like pretty efficient. But you call them, and over the phone they do like initial intake. Say like, what are your symptoms?
Right.
Like, are you suicidal? Do you have like self-harm? And once you answer that, they kind of like sort like what the next best step is. So from the phone call, they were like, okay, you could probably benefit from seeing somebody. They set that up. I think it took about 10 days. And then once I sat in with the clinician, it's like this hour-long like diagnostics thing.
yeah.
So the weird thing with like mental health, it's like very subjective.
Right.
But when you get diagnosed, it's very objective. It's like 1 to 10 scales, and like
Right,
within the last 10
So
days,
it's kind
if
of
you
like
feel-
regular medicine because like my cousin's a doctor and she's like, because one time I asked her, is that pain chart thing real? It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I guess that they translated that also into mental health.
Yeah, it's crazy because like after I sat with the clinician, like I think there's like this maybe like 50 like questionnaire that you answer, and then once you answer that, like the clinician like processes it, and then he asks you like further follow-up questions, and then there's like a quantitative like breakdown of score. And yeah, like after he answered those questions, he's like, yeah, you're pretty depressed. But honestly, like even that like realization of like, oh man, like the answers I put into this like computer, I answered as truthfully as possible, and for it to like output like, oh man, you're dealing with like major depression. That was eye-opening. Like that was interesting. But also, like, sitting in with a clinician, like, he was, like, the first guy that, like, he was the first professional I saw face-to-face.
Right.
And after he did the score, like, he looked at me and goes, you're obviously, like, not doing well. Like, no, for a person to, like, say that and, like, hear it, that helped out a lot.
Because
it-
it's a recognition of what you're feeling on the inside.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you
don't feel crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it felt like a crazy person.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like, maybe it's because, like, he was a professional and he probably saw a case like this before. For him to say, like, oh, man, you're going through a tough time, like, that, like, was super helpful. And, yeah, from there, like, I got plugged into, like, Kaiser Permanente. Like, I love their, like, mental health network because it's so awesome. Like, they have this, like, 3-week thing for depression and mood disorders. It's a group therapy thing called IOP, which is, like, intensive outpatient. I forgot what the P is. But it's group therapy for people with, like, mood disorders. And it's 3 weeks long. They meet 3 times a week, and each session is, like, 3 hours. So it's like 27 hours of like therapy over the course of 3 weeks, and it's absolutely free. It was like covering
wow.
my copay. So like the whole myth of like, you know, or the myth that like I heard, like once you get plugged into therapy, you're in it forever.
Right.
Not true. And-
not all cases.
Right, not all cases, and like, you know, that therapy is like really expensive. Not all cases.
Right.
I mean, I ended up seeing a psychiatrist, and I was on medication for about 7 months. And that thing about like, oh, once you're on medication, you stay on it forever, not necessarily true. Like, antidepressants or like mood regulators, they're incredibly expensive. Also, not true. Like, I think in 7 months, I spent something like maybe $30
Oh,
on
wow.
generics, like
On
through the
generic
copay.
stuff.
That's
Yeah.
not too bad.
Yeah, it's not bad at all.
Yeah, so a lot of the like or a lot of the thoughts I had about like what mental health like treatment was, like yeah, some of those like are kind of unfounded.
Do you think that
Potentially.
also may have like those myths that we kind of all hear about that? Do you think that's also what held you back from maybe seeking out help?
Oh yeah, I mean, like I don't know, like medication's like really freaky, because like it's your brain is like you, like essentially,
Right.
and you're taking stuff that affects that. Yeah, and like with medication, like literally, like when things got bad, I was just like desperate, saying like I'm literally signing up for everything they have to offer, because like I got to try everything.
Right.
But even like when I was filling the prescription, like yeah, it was like a scary thing, because like it's literally something that's messing with your brain chemistry.
Right.
Do you like? Did they prescribe that? Because I've always kind of wondered that about that too. Because there is there are a lot of people on these like antidepressants and stuff, and we hear a lot of people that they kind of get kind of stuck on taking those. Like they kind of use that, like they're not necessarily looking for like, I don't want to be on this forever. I want to use this for a short time to get
Yeah.
better. But what ends up happening is they do end up kind of sticking to those drugs, and they kind of lose themselves in the process a little bit. Was it when you were prescribed these? Was it something like that they felt? Was it just kind of like an aid to help you get to a certain point, or was it like, did they feel like, oh, maybe like there was something kind of wrong with your brain, and like this is a way to fix it?
Okay, so let me go back to like treatment. So I mean I talked up like IOP, which is like group therapy,
Right.
and there you kind of learn like skills on like how to deal with stuff. Like life is like generally crappy at times for like everybody.
Right.
Like one thing I learned is like different people have like different dispositions of like how they react to stuff. So you could have 100 people like react to the same like set of like stressors. You'll get like 100 different outcomes.
Right.
Some people are just prone to like break down in different ways, and you kind of like blow out to like your weakest like point. Like some people can deal with things in some ways, some people in healthy ways, some people in unhealthy ways. But yeah, in group therapy, you kind of learn how to deal with life, and that's pretty beneficial. From this like psychiatry side, chemically helping like you through a situation, like I felt that too, because as soon as I was on the medication, I responded pretty well to it. Like automatically sleep improved. I wasn't feeling happier, and I wasn't relaxing right away. Like the crazy thing is, like after I started like therapy and medication, it took about like 2 weeks into both, where like I felt like I could relax. Like it was kind of crazy. It was the first time like I could lay down in bed and like not worry about stuff. And it took like 2 weeks of like starting both therapy and medication. But medication, it definitely helped out with sleep, and with like better sleep, like I'm learning like you get a lot better outcomes for like everything.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's surprisingly sleep can help with a bunch of things. Like, mental health, like physical health.
Oh, yeah.
Sleep is so crucial. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but like the thing that I like about therapy more is like you learn like techniques to like deal with things. Medication might like help take some of the pressure off, which is also like helpful at times, at like key times, but it doesn't teach you anything.
Right.
True.
So I don't know.
So I guess that's what Robert was talking about. Like that, in that way, it becomes like a crutch, and people like tend to like depend too much on the medication.
Yeah, like medication, it's not going to fix habits. It's not going to fix like behavioral patterns.
So do you? Now I kind of wonder if like kind of that what you're saying is a myth where people they start the process, but then they're like, oh well, I'm kind of like have that feeling where I can sleep a little bit better, I can relax a little bit better. I don't really need to do much else past that. They don't push past that point to like actually fix what's really wrong with them.
Yeah, they stop. Yeah,
do you think that?
Like,
do you think that might be
like a house building metaphor? It's like they stop at the roof.
Yeah, potentially, because like I mean, like the thing that led up to like my depression and like eventual breakdown was like not dealing with stress in healthy ways. Like I mean, I kept saying again and again, couldn't find ways to like relax. I mean, like one of the like pitfalls that I fell into to like make things worse was like rumination. Oh, where like you just like think about the same bad things over and over again, and it just gets worse and worse, and like not being able to break that. Yeah, I like in therapy you kind of learn techniques to like challenge and like break that. So like if you're taking medication, it might make you feel less crummy when you get into like unhealthy habits or unhealthy cycles. But kind of learning to deal with that, I think for me at least has been like more beneficial. But with the medication, like improved sleep, and like I can't tell if it was the therapy or the medication that helped take the pressure off to like help me to start relaxing. Like it's a total unknown. But like for me, like the things that I am in control of, like the different techniques that you learn in therapy, like that's what I've seen being like really helpful. And now that I'm like off of medication, I'm still like relying on these like healthy ways to deal with, or healthier ways to deal with stress. That I can see like having like an effect on my life, even though the medication's like not here anymore.
I see.
Yeah, that's I think because I know you had shared through like social media about like how you're kind of like taking that last part of the medication. You were a little bit kind of nervous about like what's on the other side of that, if you were gonna like be able to deal with it well, or do you like now that you are, how long have you been off the medication now?
I think I've been on it for 7 months, and I've been off of it for just a little over a month.
A little over a month. Do you feel like you've been able to kind of continue on with like kind of fixing yourself and being able to deal with stress in a better way without the medication?
I mean, like, I don't know, like nothing's in this like ideal like experimental like box.
Right.
Like, at work,
Obviously.
I went to like a much less stressful position.
Right.
So that's kind of a variable that like changed, but yeah, I mean it is scary because like there are benefits to medication, but one thing I'm learning more and more is like for every medication, like it has some sort of like positive effect, but there's probably also some sort of side effect that's also like negative. And yeah, like it's weird. So when I was on the medication, like I was sleeping better, and I was able to relax more, but not sure if that was like medication or therapy. But it's weird. A weird side effect is like at night, like my leg would randomly twitch, and that's like a side effect.
Yeah, restless leg syndrome or something.
It's not even that. Like I would just be laying in bed and like, when like a doctor like hits your like kneecap, it'd be random like that.
Okay.
I get that every once in a while. Another weird thing is like I'd have these like breaks in speech where like I wanna say like a complete sentence that's like this long per se, but like my mouth would stop like 70% through. That was annoying, and these were like more and more signs like, okay, maybe the medication's helping, but like it's doing other stuff to your like mind and body.
Right. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah, that's because I was always like, you hear sometimes, or like, I mean, that some of this stuff, it kind of yeah, you're not at that like, oh, like, things are so bad, like, I mean, I can't take it anymore. You're up to here with everything, and it kind of like it mellows. It kind of keeps you at this middle ground, and you're kind of just you're existing, but you're not really yourself at the same time.
Like I didn't feel like a personality shift, and this may have been because I was taking medication like while I was doing therapy, but like I think a healthy way to see like what this like mental health treatment for me was like there's basically like me when I was depressed, I wasn't myself.
You're right.
Mhm.
And going through therapy, I was like regaining myself more and more.
Yeah.
So like there's that myth of like once you take like antidepressants or like anxiety medication or whatever, like you become a zombie. Like I didn't experience that.
Right.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I was getting my personality back. So
Okay.
it was like the inverse of that idea of like, oh, if you take medication, you're just gonna be zonked out. I mean, you're still able to feel crummy. I had plenty of like bad days while I was taking medication.
Right.
So it's not a happy pill, but in conjunction with like therapy and medication, like things were improving for me, and I can't pinpoint like what did what.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to say like because I've known you for a while now, and I could tell like kind of seeing the whole picture, and after you've gone through all this, like I mean I knew that there was times where you would have periods where like I could tell you were struggling. Not necessarily, but I was like, oh, maybe it's just like, oh, it's a bad week, because we would see each other usually about like week to week, and it's like, oh, it was just a bad couple of weeks,
Right.
and I mean, I think everyone has had those like where, oh, I've just had like a bad week. I know I've gone through like breakups, and it took me a couple weeks to get through it, and it's like, oh, but he has his Christian faith, he has people that care about him, like he's gonna be okay. I mean, we prayed for you. I prayed for you, obviously, but. It's like I didn't really. I don't live with you 24 hours a day, and I kind of. But I could tell, like, you would go through those periods where you were going through some stuff, and then but then you'd be back, and it's like, oh, all right, the John that we all know and love, his dry wit, it's back, and like, oh, so he's doing good, and I'm really happy that you. It sucks that you had to kind of go through rock bottom to I went almost rock bottom to kind of like go and get that help that you needed, but I'm glad that you went through that, and now you're kind of on that road to recovery, because it's good to have the real John Choi, and not have you go through those that really hurt. You're kind of in a prison almost, like when you're going through that stuff. I mean, you weren't sleeping, you weren't taking care of yourself.
Yeah, and it's just like if you put like pressure on a bone or something, it like breaks after a certain point. I mean, even that thing about like Christian faith, I've always had it, but just like that bone analogy, like you could be like super Christian, but like if you like put pressure on a bone enough, it's gonna snap.
Right.
So like this whole thing about like Christianity being like a shield to like prevent just consequences of like unhealthy living or just stuff. It doesn't. Like,
no, and I would agree with that too. Where I've been a Christian for a while now, and I would say that because I've gone through some issues with with church and through like kind of like my own life. And I would say it's like when I first became a Christian, I was kind of, it was not necessarily black and white, but I was very kind of like, it's like, oh, well, it's, this way, and if it's not this way, it's not good kind of thing. Right. And now I realize that there's a lot more, after going through all those kind of hardships, the world's a lot more gray, and where I'm able to see like, just because things might not necessarily be going in my direction, I still trust that, it's going in God's direction, that he's kind of taken, he's in control, and, and understanding like, the idea of, grace and all that stuff where, you went through, your issue, and, just because, I'm pretty sure you leaned on your faith, but at the same time you were able to utilize, I think like doctors that were able to like understand the mind a lot better, understand like, hey, you're going through like that doctor said, it's like yeah, you're going through a rough patch, a rough time. Like you need you need some, therapy and like all this stuff to kind of work through this stuff and to do things in a healthy manner.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of even Christians out there that might be going through what you went through. They're living an unhealthy lifestyle, not dealing with stress well, and they're not dealing with stuff well. And yeah, it takes sometimes someone on the outside who's a professional that deals with this stuff on a daily basis to help them.
Yeah,
And
I mean, like the misconceptions I talked about before about like why people or why I didn't seek out mental health treatment.
Yeah.
I mean, that exists like absent of religion. But I mean, if you look at like religion and like healthcare, that's like another like insane topic.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you look at like one end of the spectrum, it's like Christian Scientists. I think they're the ones that like won't take like aspirin when they're feeling bad.
Yeah, they're a little bit on the crazy side.
And then if you go to like Jehovah's Witnesses, they're like iffy about surgery and blood transfusions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And even in like kind of mainline, like Christianity, like when it comes to like mental health specifically, like there's like a whole spectrum of like views on that stuff.
Right.
So like just regular like preconceptions about what mental health care is, that's like one barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're religious, that could be like another barrier.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's one of those tough things, man. It's like my take on it is I don't know, like even like going through like the treatment, it was still like in an act of faith. I wasn't like, oh man, by doing this I'm rejecting like God's treatment.
No,
and God's
yeah.
But I mean that's where like the spectrum of like theology goes when it comes to like healthcare. Like some people would say like, oh man, he copped out, he's not trusting God.
Yeah.
Right.
That's,
Yeah. No.
I think that's a misconception too, because I've always talked about this with on the theological level, because I wouldn't necessarily. There's a lot of people out there, friends of ours even that we've even had on this podcast, who are in the they believe in a lot of the the miracles from like the Book of Acts and stuff, and people are healed and they're freed from whatever they're on their body or their mind or whatever. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I mean, that I'm a believer that it does happen. I just don't think that necessarily in the Western world where we have access to, the Bible, in a fairly regular basis, that I don't think that those things happen quite as frequently. And we also have, like I said, modern medicine and, people who even Christians who are doctors or psychologists, psychiatrists that are helping people like yourself. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing when you're going you need sometimes you need a doctor. It's not a sin, or it's not that you're relying on God. It's God's working through that other person to help you through things.
Yeah. I mean, another thing is like I think my main takeaway like that I'm trying to share with like more people, like whatever like spectrum you're a part of, if you think like you're like not functioning well and it's due to like poor like mental health, like mood disorders, like mental health, or like just like unhealthy habits that like lead to bad mental health, whatever your spectrum or inclination, like talk to somebody about it. Like, because even like that face-to-face meeting where the clinician said like, oh man, you're going through a tough time. Like for me, I was like, okay, I gotta be like honest and just answer all these questions truthfully and see what comes out.
Right.
And the outcome of that was like, some guy said like, oh man, you're going through a tough time, you could probably like benefit from some of this.
Yeah.
So I think no matter what the like spectrum you are, like, I'm not saying psychiatry is like an instant answer for like everything, but like some sort of like intervention, I think it's like it can be a conservative thing to say like, if you think you're going through something, talk to somebody about it. Get like some sort of perspective on it.
And they might be able to at least point you in the right direction of, hey, you're going through something, this type of person might help you out. Or in your case, like, yeah, it's like, hey, yeah, you need to do a couple of these things that might be worth your while.
Yeah, and like if it ends up not working and you're still not functioning well or feeling well, try to do something else.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's like the idea, a bricklayer will still call a plumber to fix his toilet.
Yeah. Yeah, and like honestly, like I've been trying to deal with this like myself, and just have not been like making like too much headway in like dealing with stress in like healthy ways.
Right.
And I've tried like years to like figure it out, but over the last like, man, it's almost a year at this point. Within like 10 months, like I've learned so much in this like period of time where I'm able to like deal with things a lot better. Where like the outlook of like kind of like dealing with things like in a healthy way from here on out, it's looking better. But like the statistics are against me. Like the stats are like if you have one depressive episode, the chance of you having a second one, I think is like 50%.
50.
But if you do have that second one, your chance of getting a third is like 90%.
Wow.
So I don't know if it's like propensity or like people not dealing with things, but like I don't know, man. Like the numbers are like I started doing all this like research because like from the time I called to set up like the face-to-face meeting, I had like a span of like a week or so. Like when I wasn't panicked, I would just like do research on like mental health just to like prep myself of like what I was getting into. The numbers are shocking. It's like in every year, like 1 in 6 like adults like have some sort of mental health issue. And at any one given time, it's like 5% or something. Like numbers are shocking. Like if you work at like a company and just apply like the company you're working at is like a sample size of the population.
Right.
If you work in like a group of like 20 people, there's a chance that like one person's like going through some stuff at that moment. And then there's a chance that like 3 or 4 people within the course of a year will have gone through something. Like those are crazy numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I don't know, like I mean just like me, I was probably dealing with stuff for a long time, but I didn't really deal with it until things got like terrible.
Do you feel now that you've gone through this and you've gotten the help that, let's say, like you know, based off those numbers, like, okay, would you be able to recognize like, oh wait, there's certain stressors that are in my life that are kind of bringing me back to where I was at? Do you think that's like, okay, now I need to go kind of talk with somebody again to deal with it, or do you think you'd be able to catch it a lot faster now than you would have, kind of like how you had been dealing with it in the past?
I don't know. Hopefully, I mean that's the honest like answer.
But I would hope that you would have some sort of awareness now. I mean, have gone through this and like picking up on like maybe like certain tendencies or.
That's a
like
tough
certain,
thing with
like trigger things.
That's a tough thing with like what causes depression. Like it's not one like thing. It's not even.
Well,
like
I mean, I guess I meant more generically, like kind of like sense, like feelings, like
feeling. Maybe like one thing I'm noticing is like I'll catch myself like the thing that led up to like. Okay, so I kept saying again and again, I'm not dealing with like stress well. That's like a natural tendency.
Right.
But I kind of put that on myself because I take on a lot, and that's like a natural personal like tendency. I've been catching myself like overcommitting at times.
Right. Yeah. So there you go.
So I don't know. You kind of learn, or like this is where therapy is like important. Like again, with therapy, like I'm a fan of like group therapy. I've tried individual therapy, and like I didn't respond so well to that. But like in group therapy, at least there were like these set curriculum like each day, and you would do
like a task.
Kind of, you go through like an exercise, and it's through these exercises where like you go, oh man, like this thing stresses me out, or oh man, this is what I enjoy in life. So like I was saying before, like if I had a chance to like do something like that before I had like a legitimate breakdown, I may have been able to like spot like what sets me off or like what stresses me out or what's like unhealthy for me before a breakdown. And I mean I guess I did learn some things, but like I'm never sure. Like it takes constant like reflection to see like how well you're doing day to day, because like with my like with my unhealthy like behavior with like stress and work, it was this like subtle thing where it wasn't like this like, oh, I'm doing fine breakdown. It was like this gradual like downslope of like over the years progressively generally getting worse, and I didn't see it, or it would get worse like so subtly where I was like, okay, this is how life is. And you know, like I'm not gonna pretend like I'm so aware of myself now where I'm not gonna fall into that trap again.
Right. Okay.
But
at least you're honest.
Yeah, I don't know. I think honesty is like the first thing. Like,
yeah. I mean, it should be, because you know, if you know you're truly honest with yourself, then you would have been able to like, you know, approach your primary like right away, like, I need help.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, so it all begins with that.
Like one thing I'm struggling with is like a phrase that I learned in therapy was lower your threshold for suffering. And you know, like a guilty pleasure of mine is like browsing Instagram a lot. Oh, and there's a lot of like younger people that are like always about like getting the grind and like, oh, just like push through it, man.
Oh yeah.
Like
yeah.
I'm not saying like hard work isn't something to be
right. No, yeah.
But
no one's saying that you know, take it easy, but you know, it's seasons. Yeah. You know, there's a season to grind. There's a season to you know ease off.
Yeah. So
but you know, it can't always be about the grind. You know, you grind yourself into nothing.
Yeah, you kind of redlined yourself too, like where
right.
the motor blew.
But yeah, like those two like extremes of like, like having this natural tendency of like, you know, wanting to work hard versus like kind of also knowing my limitations of like, you know, things are like getting bad, you need to like take a break. Just trying to find that balance. It's like I'm probably going to do that the rest of my life.
Yeah. I think we all kind of go through that too a little bit. I sometimes I do kind of push myself past, you know, I kind of what you were saying, like you overextend yourself, you push yourself past your limits, and it's like you're being pulled in too many different directions, and it's like crap, like I gotta stop. You know, otherwise, you know, I'm gonna go crazy because you're not like, you know, you're not sleeping enough, you're not taking a break, you're not you're not even like doing what you're supposed to be doing correctly, even like you're not giving 100% to what you really need to be focused on. And it's you know, in your case, I think it was even to a greater degree than just that.
I mean, like when things got bad, like I didn't know what was going on. Like you're just feeling terror, and like you're constantly like freaking yourself out. Like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get fired. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get evicted.
Yeah, like you're.
Oh my gosh, like.
Yeah, you're in nightmare mode. Like, you know, it's you're in a living nightmare, essentially.
Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, there was a couple of like days where like things got terrifying, and like. I don't know. I probably like the worst night of it was like, I tried to logically get out of my like situation where I was like, all right, let's think my way out of this and like cheer myself up somehow. And then
that never worked.
Right? And then I was like, all right, let's look at my situation. Job, probably bad, probably gonna get fired. Family, freaked out and not in any way to like support me like financially or even emotionally, and I just kept whittling down like all these like things. But like one thing where like my faith actually like helped in was like as I kept whittling these things away, I was like, all right, I'm not sleeping, I'm not in control of my body or like my emotions. Like I kept like scratching things off where I could like pull myself out. And then this is probably a flaw of mine. I went to like my spiritual like pillars like last. But I was like, okay, let's look for like verses in the Bible that like used to work before. I was like, oh, God loves me. Wait a second, I'm going through a bad time. He might not love me. Or like, oh, God's going to provide for me. Oh, but wait, I screwed up pretty bad. And then I kept like whittling down like not just like my life circumstance stuff, but also through like these pillars of faith that I had. But the bottom pillar that like ended up remaining was like, I still had the faith of like believing that like Christ was real and he died for me.
Yeah.
Like, that was eye-opening too, because like literally that was the last thing on my list to like pull me out of this. And I don't know, like even being like a Christian, like kind of that like list of stuff that went in order. It was like my job, like my ability to like provide for myself, being independent, being healthy, like keeping like family relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Those all came before like the pillars of faith that I thought were like the foundations of my life. And then even like through the pillars of like faith, like the last one was like the most foundational, like what defines a Christian was like, you know, Christ died for my sins.
Mm-hmm.
That was literally last. Like, I mean, that was eye opening too. Yeah. So that was, I mean, once I had that revelation, like it wasn't like, oh, I felt better and like things got better. I was still feeling like terrible, but like, I don't know, man. Like that was like an eye opening thing.
Yeah, I remember. You know, it's funny that you mentioned that because you know I went through kind of that time where I was unemployed.
Yeah.
And it went for. I was thinking like, oh, you know, it might be a few months. And like I thought like I had kind of like a lot to offer on a lot of stuff. And then I think, you know, I would get rejected. It's like it went on for almost a year and a half.
Right.
And I was like, crap. I you know, thankfully I had, you know, good friends and family that helped me out, but I was like, you know, kind of that, you know, what money I did have like saved up, you know, kind of went away, and it's like, crap. I don't know if like I'm gonna get through this. And the one thing that kind of like what you did, I whittled it, because I went through a period where I was like, yeah, life sucks right now, and I whittled everything down, and I realized like, how is, you know, you get to that bottom part, it's like, well, Christ died for me, like I have that, you know, and it's like, how did that not be the first?
Right.
That should be the very first thing.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's the foundation, but that if that foundation isn't there, like I'm fucked. You know, it's kind of, that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And yeah, that it's kind of funny that you kind of came to that same realization. It's not that everything got better at that point, because mine didn't. For my situation didn't change right away after realizing that. I was like, how is it that like this was the last thing that I realized, but it's the most important thing that is really in our life. And I think now that I've kind of come through, you know, what I was dealing with, and I realized like, man, like if I didn't have that, like there's no hope. There's no hope in my life. There's nothing that, you know, yeah, I wouldn't have gone through it, what I got through. Do you kind of feel like that was kind of the same thing where like, yeah, you were still struggling with everything and it wasn't like everything got better, but it's like, oh, that was something that helped you get through what you were dealing with? In a sense, like, did it help you like push on at least?
Yeah, because like as I went through that like list, like, so at least with like the spiritual parts, like once I established that like, you know, Christ died for me, like the other like pillars of like my faith that I had, like those started to become more believable again.
Right.
Because yeah, I mean, when you're going through a bad time and things are obviously not going well, you know, versus like, you know, God being your protector, or, you know, like God's love and provision like being like around, it's hard to believe. But if you still maintain that, like, you know, like Christ came down, like died for like one's sins, then the other stuff become believable. So like at least in the spiritual side, like everything has to like tie into like Christ. Everything has to, because like you could take other like elements of like God, like absent from Christ, and then they get challenged a lot more easily.
Right.
Because yeah, I mean, when things are going bad and, you know, you're obviously, you feel like you're not getting taken care of, and like you remember verses where like, oh, you know, God's gonna provide, but in your life you don't see that provision.
Right.
You go like, oh, this is obviously wrong, or this isn't happening for me. And yeah, it's easy to say that, but I mean, at least with the spiritual side, like, you know, I'm understanding like why Christ is in the center of all these things, because theologically it does solve a lot of the problems of like, oh, you know, like, no, yeah, like, you know, these terrible things happen, or like things go in like not fun ways, but you know, as long as like Christ is the answer, you know, these other things still can like be maintained.
Right. Yeah, I definitely feel like that, you know, whatever I'm going through, even if it like, you know, I'm having a bad day, or I'm going through a lot of stuff that, you know, even if I had nothing, I still have like that that center, that foundation that kind of does answer those questions, that makes it kind of fills in the gaps that like otherwise would just kind of fall apart without it.
I'm like, yeah, man, that thing was like last on my list. That's
that was
eye-opening thing.
Yeah,
still. I was like, dang, I gotta keep this job. This is my life. I mean, that was like, looking back on it, like that's a pretty sweet revelation. But like, man, when you're going through it, it's like,
Yeah.
I'm feeling terrible. Now I'm feeling like terrible for different reasons.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for sharing all this stuff, because I know I imagine it's not easy kind of having to relive this. I know this is kind of your second time kind of talking about this, everything that you went through, and hopefully it helps you kind of like you're talking through it, and kind of it helps you, is kind of like part of that process of helping you recover through everything. And so I want to thank you for having the courage to come on the podcast to share about it. And my goal was not to just like, hey, I have a mental health problem, and
right.
It's like, and like, you're not alone in kind of like the platitudes that you have a lot of people that on YouTube and whatever kind of share about this stuff, but more of telling people, like, hey, you don't have to be afraid of the common misconceptions. And
Stigma.
I went right, and you kind of talked about like, hey, I went through this, I took these steps, and it's like it's not like a be all end all. It does take work, but you've kind of you're on your way.
I like, one thing that helps is like there's definitely a stigma, but like people are a lot more accepting of like mental health services,
right,
and like just good mental health in general. Like that's one positive thing. But yeah, I mean, like every time I talk about this, I really think about those like two statistics. Like, annually, like 1 in 6 adults, they'll go through some sort of crisis. Like 5% of general population, they're going through something at that moment. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, people go through this kind of stuff. Like, it's like the experience I had, it may be like atypical, where like I just had a fantastic like matchup with services and medication, and everything worked out in a certain way where it worked out like great for me.
Right.
But I don't know, like I like talking about this because like from the last like 10 months, like the quality of life like day to day has improved like so much. Where like, yeah, I mean, this is great. Like actually seeking out services was a definite improvement in life. It takes work, and like it's so like when I took that time off of work, I was off of work for something like 3 months or something. I was able to get like disability from that, but still incredibly costly, incredibly like uncomfortable.
Right. I remember you talked about kind of you going through that period. It's like, yeah, it was kind of I took a sacrifice to fix, kind of get better.
Yeah, but like I keep talking about this stuff because like if you can catch it early, it's way cheaper. I don't know, like at least with work, and at least in California, there's like a lot of laws that like are very protective.
There's a lot of protections.
Yeah. And like if you need the help, like take advantage of the stuff, like take advantage of it early, because it's easier like dealing with it when things are like small and kind of chaotic before they get like insanely chaotic. Like, I mean, I think that's why I like talking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I mean the statistics like 1 in 6 and like 5 in 20, like that's crazy.
Right.
Yeah,
Or like 1 in 20. I'm sorry.
That's like I said, I just wanna thank you for coming on to talk about this. And like we said, we've had I've known you for a while. We've talked a little bit about this, kind of having dinners together and stuff. And I'm glad that you're getting better.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're the person we have sitting next to us is the real John Choi. It's not, you probably wouldn't be here if you were, not you.
Yeah.
And, I think it does take a little bit of bravery to kind of, keep talking about it. And I think maybe that does help you. It's kind of also helps you a little bit in your recovery to share about what you went through, to kind of help, maybe I don't know if I'm just speaking from my end, what I see, like maybe it does help you a little bit in being able to share that with other people, and maybe being able to be kind of a a guide, and it's like, hey, go get help if you need help.
Yeah, I mean that it helps me like process like what I went through. It makes it seem like less random.
Right.
Or if I could like help someone like convince them to like at least talk to somebody, like do something about it. It makes like what I went through like less of a random tragedy. But yeah, I mean like again, the statistics are crazy.
Yeah, I hadn't heard those, like some of the stats that you shared. That's it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1 in 6, 1 in 20.
Yeah, it's and it's increasing. I mean, whether it's like more people are aware of it now, or the world's getting like just crazier in how it works, where like it's increasing, but it is increasing. And you could like track like insurance claims,
Right.
like year to year for mental health services.
Yeah.
I think it's been like a 3 to 6% annual increase for like a decade or something.
6%.
Yeah. So it's either people are seeking it more, or people are just suffering from poor mental health more. But yeah, it's something that people have to deal with.
Yeah.
I
mean,
think
it's because back in the day it was just like you're feeling stressed or whatever, just they'll walk it off, or go just drink away your problems.
Yeah.
that was typically the treatment back then.
But yeah, so I think that's a kind of a good way to end the podcast. I had some other stuff that we wanted to talk about, but I think this is a good way to end it. Kind of let it be more of a serious podcast, which is good. John, where can people find you or contact you?
If you want to be found.
If you want to be found.
If you want to be found.
Like off the grid. Like,
He's off in his hidden shack with his cat.
yeah, I have a cat, I guess. I don't know. I'm on Instagram. I don't know. Like,
what's your Instagram handle?
Yeah.
Like finally _waking_up. It's not like a really easy to say. Oh no, like
so,
all right. So
finally
_waking _up. Like I change it like once a year, so I might not be found, but that's what it is currently.
All right. Well, John, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah, this is that's the episode for Circle of Jerks podcast. As always, you can hit us up on our social media handles. Twitter is @podcastcoj. Instagram is Circle of Jerks podcast. And if you want more content from us, we have a ton of old episodes, both for this podcast. We do Tuesdays. We do a live stream every Tuesday, nocturnal transmissions at around 8 o'clock. And we do have, if you're into gaming, I have some old episodes from Up by Up Down. We're going to get more into that a little bit later. It's on a little bit of a hiatus. But until our next episode, you guys stay great, and we'll see you next time.
Deuces.